Here is a tricky one because most of us are going to experience some kind of issue with our hair over our lives. Whether it's a major or minor one, there's going to need to be a reflection on what it means to lose something or for something to change that has been maybe important for us for a large part or all of our lives. And in my own situation, as I'm sure you can tell, there's been some changes recently that I think is important to talk about. There's 3 things that I think are important to think about in this space that I wanted to share today to give you the chance to think about too. Most things don't matter to others as much as they matter to you. We have this idea, this false notion that when we are doing something or we make some change or we are going through some struggle, that when other people perceive us, when they look to us, it is in a way kind of magnified and has this grand impact and effect on their life and the way that they view us. But in all reality, most people are so absorbed in their own lives, as they rightfully should, that there is not really the same kind of impact that we were thinking. There is obviously going to be some kind of acknowledgement, especially from the people that are closest to us, of things that are different in our lives. We might get a different haircut, we might move to a different country, we might start a different job. But all of these things, unless they have direct relevance to someone else's life, they're not probably going to care about it very much, which includes most of the things that on a day-to-day basis we struggle with, that we might feel insecure, ashamed, or just lack confidence in presenting because there's a certain kind of fear of how we might be perceived or how going through that kind of process might be interpreted by some people. But there's a very interesting psychological phenomenon called the spotlight effect. And essentially what that says is that we miscalculate how much others notice what we're doing. And I think it's a very interesting example to think about magicians, right? And sleight of hand. We think that if someone is right directly in front of us, that we're just going to see everything that's going on. But our beam of focus in a particular moment is usually pretty helpful for these people to be able to make these little tricks and to make these little deceptions. But that's also the case when we think about how other people view us and our lives. They aren't really going to be able to take into account everything that's happening all at once while also thinking about their own lives and the other people in their lives as well. There is only so much information that a human can focus on at once. And when people, again, are so absorbed in their own lives, the other things that are happening around them can very easily just go unnoticed, can go by without really even any consideration at all. What this means is oftentimes the largest audience is just the one in our head, and we misplace that perceived audience for a real one. When we're approaching something new or about to make a bold choice, there's something that I think we should keep in mind. Do whatever it is you want to do, not for the watchers, but for the work. That is how we can make sure that we are more aligned with what we are actually wanting to do rather than just how we're wanting to be perceived. And again, at the end of the day, that perception is hopelessly flawed. So why would we want to pander to that instead of align with ourselves? What is most aligned with your best self-interest usually isn't what is most comfortable, convenient, or conventional. I often see people talking about being selfish or engaging in one's own self-interest as a purely negative thing. And while I can absolutely acknowledge and understand that it can be negative, there absolutely is ways that people can pursue a shallow kind of self-interest. I feel like including that as the only means to be able to express the self-interest, I think is very flawed and unhelpful. Because ultimately, there's so many more situations where we are given the chance to be able to fulfill our highest self-interest, our deep self-interest in a way that is not only aligned with what is best for us, but ultimately what's best for others as well. And so when we consider these situations where we want to do something that might rub a few shoulders the wrong way or rock the boat, I think we need to reflect. We need to take a second to consider what that is actually saying. Are we just trying to conform? Are we just trying to do what is conventional because it's familiar, because it's easy, because it's convenient and comfortable? Or are we actually trying to do what feels the most aligned with the deepest self-interest that we have access to? And unfortunately, most people aren't even aware of that distinction. So if there is any claims of being selfish or of pursuing one's self-interest, it is boxed, it is categorized as this purely negative form of selfishness that we've come to see in popular culture, in media, and in other general discussion. But what does all of this talk about self-interest have to do with me shaving my head? Well, let me clarify. There's so many situations in a day and across our lives where we have the chance to make a choice that is either comfortable, convenient, conventional, or again, one that causes a little bit of friction, that chooses to do something different, that isn't familiar, that we might not do well, that we might even fail, that we might revert and choose to come back to where we are right now. But if we aren't able to take that leap, if we aren't able to take that step, then we're destined to only do what we've ever done. And unfortunately, the likelihood that we've landed on the perfect aligned life that is exactly what we want on the first try, just guided by what our friends, family, society, and the experiences we've had up to this point have led us to, is likely quite low. So we need to be willing to try new things and to get deeper into what it means to actually be aligning with our self-interest. And the only way that we can do that is by getting to know ourselves a little bit better too. So go out there, try something new, make some mistakes, learn about yourself, and then from there, life becomes a lot clearer and easier to take the next step. Because it's not about getting things perfectly. It's about sincerely trying our best to make the next best step, rather than just making the next best convenient, comfortable, or conventional step. The next step that is the most aligned, that is the hard part. Do what you can with what you've got. It's a common idea that we hear thrown around quite often. But ultimately, when we think about so many industries that exist, they aren't there to do what you can with what you've got. They are trying to overextend oneself to be able to make up for perceived insecurities and flaws that have been presented or projected onto us by these industries. And of course, these industries don't exist in a vacuum. There are obviously people that do seem to really think it's important to have certain things when it comes to, let's say, physical attractiveness. Oh, you're bald? Go get a hair transplant. Oh, you're too short? Oh, well, extend your shins. Oh, your face is a little bit misshapen and naturally unbalanced? Well, just go get surgery. Great, surgery can fix everything. But I'm not necessarily against surgery or cultivating one's appearance in these sorts of ways. But I think it's much more important to consider what is underlying these decisions. Are we doing it out of appreciation or genuine love and respect for ourselves? Or do we feel as though we need these things to be good enough for the partner or for the friends or for the life that we're wanting? Where are we drawing our significance from when it comes to these decisions? So when we inevitably have these things that happen in our lives that we can't control, that have in a way been forced onto us, either by nature or by others, we have a choice. We can either play the victim and stay in that role of feeling hard done by, and that there's nothing that can happen, and that there's nothing that can change, and that our life is over. Or we can try to take accountability for as much of the process, as much of the situation that we can. We can focus on what we can change, and we can move forward nonetheless. This isn't to say that that path is easy. It is quite difficult. But it is something that I think radically improves our lives. And sure, there might be some early stage interventions that we can sometimes take advantage of, whether it's to something like balding or something like cancer even. But I'd argue that when it comes to most of the day-to-day disruptions that we experience, we can't control our genetics, we can't control whether someone likes us, we can't control how people treat us. In these things, the solution isn't to try harder at making the thing that is outside of our control come into our control. Most of the time, the answer is simply to relinquish that which already is out of our control and to focus on what is inside of our control. Show your strength, show your character, make the decision you know you need to make.